Hello, and welcome to Neuromentoring. We are so glad you can join us.
I'm Lucy.
And I'm Brian.
Together, we explore what mentoring is in the neurodiverse spaces we call universities. Today's topic is tech, mentoring, and wellbeing.
Now, this comes with a sort of preamble that Lucy got a new thing. Lucy, what arrived for you?
A shiny, new, in Starlight, 15-inch MacBook Air with the M3 processor.
Oh, here I am on my 2017 Mac, just taking a little bit of time for things to load up. I'm a little bit jealous, but there is something about these tech things that we have, which I've always called myself, not always, because I'm really quite old now. Ever since computing could go in my pocket, I thought of myself as a cyborg. Actually, there's a lot of my processing that I decant into these objects things just to make my life easier. And actually, anything I can do to share this minimization of expectation with everyone else, or minimization of executive functioning, for me it is. Having a to-do list that tells me what to do in the morning. Absolute joy. Lucy, what has been the best bit about a new piece of tech arriving for you?
Peak, first of all, with the freshly baked anything Apple.
Yeah.
I'm an Apple household. We love Apple because everything synonymously links up most of the time. Actually, I rephrase that, most of the time Apple all links up. Great.
Now, just so that other operating systems do apply, I grew up in a Dragon 32 household, which just dates me an awful lot. That was Welsh engineering at its best. Yeah, you can buy those rings that you can do contact payments with, which have more processing power than the computers I started. But my dad was in IT, so I grew up with IT, and so we had all the iterations of Windows. And he never moved to Apple, and his suspicion of it was too easy. Now, that's why I love it. Apple, as you say, it all links together. You got your devices. You can even take your phone and stick it on top of your MacBook, and then its camera will FaceTime or Zoom and follow you around. So you can do cooking programs. It's one of those things I've done. It's brilliant. But it does mean if you like to know how things work, it's a little bit black box. So we love Apple, because as do I. It comes with that caveat that there are people out there, you might love the black box, the open box of Android and Windows, where you have a bit more control over what, unless of course you need your staff and you need to use a university laptop where you can't do anything to those things. Oh, the nightmare. Lucy, tell me about the interconnectedness of the Apple.
I can edit document. I mean, a lot of it you can do on Windows devices. Don't get me wrong. This isn't an exclusive perk, Apple.
It's just
easy. I think it comes down to preference. I mean, I was educated with Windows all the way up to I went to university. Then all of a sudden, the benefit of having a thin, lightweight, ergonomic laptop with my first MacBook Air 2017 model. You know, it was nice to have virtually a tablet with a keyboard that did everything I needed to do for university. That was when I kind of converted over to Apple. But prior to that, don't get me wrong, Windows at home, Windows at school. We haven't always been an Apple household.
Just to add to that, when I went to university, my dad managed to get from his company a desktop. So I had a desktop. I was the only person in our course who had a computer that we know of. Everybody else had electronic typewriters, and mine ran off DOS. So I had to put in, there we go. I'm an ancient dinosaur. I love the fact it's got so easy that sometimes we can just press a button and it works. And that's why I think, for me, Apple has it. You don't have to think about the integration. It's just there.
Absolutely.
I'm assuming you run calendars both on your laptop and on your phone.
Well, yes, technically, but it's not the Apple Calendar.
Tell me more.
I loved Google Suite for my business. I loved it when I was studying, when I was doing my master's degree, and I love it for everything else and in my everyday life in between. Appointment, social commitment. I love Google Calendar, its integration with Google Document, integration with Google Meet, and I kind of rely on Google Calendar for reminders, for sending links to my student with the session details and the link there in it. I, believe it or not, use the Google Suite on all my Mac products. I do also use Windows software for other things on my Mac, but generally for organisation, executive function difficulties, Google Suite for me is the one.
It is. And this is the one I want all mentors to walk away with, is that the students that we're working with will come with their preferences, with the things that work. We do not take away the things that work. We as mentors, just to have a wide view of all the different things. We may personally use Google yourself. I like the integration of Apple because, well, there's an amazing little app called Meter, which is METR or something like that. One of those weird spellings. And every, I used to. So Meter means that there's a button at the top of my computer that I press, and it comes and tells me when all my virtual appointments are. So I just click on one and it takes me straight through. No, none of this having to find an email or click on an event. It's just there. I've also linked it up to an app on my Mac called In Your Face, which 5 minutes before any of my online meeting turns my entire screen grey and stops me doing for a few seconds what I should be doing and boots me out of that slightly hyper-focused tunnel I can get myself into. Just ways of knowing what I'm not good at, which I'm not great at transition, and having the cyborg of me doing the transition for me by forcing me to do it. And because I've chosen it to do it, it takes away that can't do when other people tell me to move on. But when I've told me via tech to move on, I've got no
Story.
Like,
all of a sudden, it's an acceptable demand.
it is, and I think that's a really important bit about neurodivergence and tech, is the demands are our own, and we have advocacy over the tech that tells us what to do. Which, when I now get down to, so I've got location reminders on my phone, so that if I'm ever walking past the local supermarket, it goes ping and tells me I need butter or milk or whatever. Which, because I've told it to do it, is better than members of my family going, "Dad, we've run out of milk."
Yeah. Yes.
Life changer, bit of a life changer, because, and I'm not sure this applies to students, but maybe for mentors, it makes your life easier. Actually getting milk delivered by a milkman via an app, so that there's always milk being delivered on a regular basis, so I can always have a cup of coffee or cup of tea.
That's all right if you're the bourbon, but if you're in the countryside, it's not an option.
Countrysides are an excuse for wearing wellies and tweed.
Life, Brian, got it right. These dungarees,
Yes.
chicken, living my best life.
This is an aside. We've only recently found out we both keep chickens. Oh, yes. At the moment, it's raining outside. It's looking very bedraggled. Poor little chicken. Back to tech. Unless you've got a way of technifying chickens.
I remotely control the door that opens in the morning.
Really? That is so cool. Why did you decide to do that?
Because the battery-powered one that was set to a timer, the batteries that we got through were crazy. So in the end, we decided to go for a wide-in one with a big battery.
And there is this thing. It's also, it's not just having the battery versus the wired one. It's being able to do things in the simplest possible way.
It's one less demand. It's one less demand on an already demanding world we live in. Okay, chickens are sorted.
And this is why we brought together tech, mentoring, and well-being. I think both of us have this idea that to live a nicely technologically optimized life is a good way of surviving as mentors, but also the kind of skills we may want to pass on to our mentees. Okay, I'm going to have one I'm approaching 50 grumbly moment, which is because I've lived through a time when technology was hard. Now that technology is easy, maybe we don't put so much effort into it.
Yeah. I can see your point with that.
But saying that, now that it's easy, we don't have to put the effort into it, and it should be easy for all, but we still need those wonderful people in our lives who like the taking it apart to see how it works, who like the great big gestalt plan that they've got in their head. I will press this one button and 17 things will happen that will make my life easier.
Yeah.
And
But I think development in technology has come with its caveats in that we are on demand. Whether you're directly or indirectly,
Mm.
in education, if you're a mentor, being online, you're sort of not subconsciously, but you're sort of in a secondary sense, you're always available, you're always online. There's a caveat to that, and there's a caveat to managing that, and there's a responsibility on the mentor to manage that, or for the mentor's own well-being, but actually managing that for the interests of their students.
It is. I did a big mental change myself in this, and this would have been the early 2000s when I could sort of see this bombardment starting to happen for me, and also how I was bombarding other people. And this was before I was a mentor. So I spent, well, I like the 40-day rules. Basically, if you need a new habit, do it for 40 days. Seems to work for me. Other mileage may apply. I decided not to write about me in social medias. And I tried very hard, and I think I managed it, not to put the word I or me in an email. So it was my communications were all about what do other people need.
Yeah.
And then I could just, ring fence it just to, first of all, what does my family need? What do the people I work with need? What do maybe, if I go in social media, the wider communities that I'm part of, what do they need? And by actually flipping that, rather than going me, and just being bombarded, it was more of a you. What do what do we together need? And by flipping my thinking about that, it helped me an awful lot. It's not a perfect thing. Sometimes the need to help can overwhelm us.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also it can keep us on the straight and narrow. And I know that through some of my darker times, actually going out into communities, sometimes virtually, sometimes in my real life, has actually helped me with who I am as a person. So it's
Yeah.
that technology and well-being and bringing it together and trying to get rid of the I, maybe. I don't know.
Mm. It's an interest. Maybe we should do an episode on that, Ryan.
Yeah. Oh,
Applying that to the science of being a mentor.
yes. About having to, well, particularly as a mentor, with the least important person in the room, and to get to live with that. Yeah, kind of cool. But technology, we started off. You've got a new Mac. We asked you what the lovely things was. We talked about that integration thing. What are the things that's winded you up? Winded? Yes, winded you up. Something chronic.
Remembering password.
Yeah. How do
The
it?
amount of, well, without giving too much away. Historically, I've had the same password for everything. April's got this lovely feature that they now tell you when your data has been leaked onto the black market. And now I don't know how much of that is scaremongering and how much of that is true. I wouldn't like to say that I know either way, but that has now started me utilising over the last 6 months the whole suggested password. Now that causes a load of problems when you're trying to transfer one backup onto another. So that's been the biggest headache, really, is the logging into things, remembering passwords.
Now, occasionally in higher education, we have some shared resources where maybe multiple people might have to use the same thing. So if we've got students who are working on group projects and all need to access a certain thing. One of the greatest security cyber things I came across is a strong password can just be 3 random words. Now, as humans, we're not great at creating 3 random words. Yeah. Jedi Force be with you. Yeah. That's 4 words. I can't do it off the top of my head. Interestingly, I don't know if you've come across the location place. What 3 words?
Yeah.
Yes. So I just spin the globe, press at random, and it gives me 3 random words.
That's a good idea.
So a lovely way of generating 3 random words just from random locations. It does mean though that I've now got lists of 3 random words, and while you can tell other people verbally, if you ever need to get people to log in, that's great. Remembering them is not my forte. So like you, I go back to the sort of built-in password managers that lock myself in. With things like Apple Watches, you can now double click to open passwords if you're within certain distance of your computer. If you've got a nice fingerprint reader, that takes off so much pressure.
But until you've got the annoying feature where your device has switched off, generally has powered down because it's run out of battery, and to be able to access it again, you have to manually put the password in.
Yep. One password to rule them all. I highly recommend for that one, if you have, and hopefully most students have got some kind of safe place in their lodgings, their halls. So if they don't have a small safe that's been bolted onto something, actually, have you seen those tins of beans that aren't
Yes.
that have a code and you click them open and just putting your master password in there. So if the worst comes to shove, then you can. Or rather than having it on campus, actually having it back at home, and then you can just phone up and go, Mum, could you just check the safe? Yeah, in there, there's a little book. Yeah, in there, there's it's got my blood type in there as well. Yeah, yes, thank you. And by having a password like 3 random words that is easily spokenable on the phone, you can actually delegate some of that responsibility to the loved ones and trusted ones in your life.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really practical solution.
Hey, you sound shocked that it came from Brian. Don't talk about the spirituality of being a cyborg. Do you want to talk about practical stuff, Brian? It is. So passwords, it is doable. The changing of passwords itself can become an executive functioning barrier. So I know when students arrive in their first year, those first few weeks, the number of them that haven't accessed their university email because it's an awful faff. And actually having a mentor right from the beginning is really useful, just to sit down and have somebody to go through that faff with, particularly a mentor that can be trusted, just to turn away when passwords are being entered. On that, university emails, how do you find university emails?
Well, from the beginning,
Oh, that says so much, doesn't it?
we use Office 365.
Yep.
My university degree used Office 365. Trying to use Outlook, Team, and between them requires so much functioning. Not the most practical way forward, but I think when students are in, I mean, it might be slightly different, and I may be overgeneralizing here, but a lot of students, Teams is normal. It's a normal part of their education now. So I think it would be less. Yeah, it would be less of an overwhelming. But don't get me wrong, there is so much, especially if it's a first individual in a family unit that's going to university. That's everything that's brand new. Needs limited passwords, authenticator apps. They're all things that previously they just log onto their school sixth form or college computer, blah, 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 and they're on. And all of a sudden they've got all these extra demands on them on their executive function. And like you say, I think that either you have to access emails, to access occasionally some things like mentors, different situations occur. But I think, it could be definitely contribute to sort of the sense of overwhelm.
And when there's that sense of overwhelm, when you just get more emails from the university or recommendations from your tutor because you haven't got emails sorted out yet, that you go along to the IT department, which is going to go and see absolute strangers about stuff you feel really vulnerable about. Again, there is that mentoring role. I think part of our mentoring duty to our students is to be okay enough at tech to actually link and get stuff going. There's also, I think with tutors, I sometimes think about it, the unbearable slowness of email chain. And this is, my memory is, and always has been, shot to pieces. So that if I write an email and my tutor, and this is going back a few years now, didn't respond to it within 2 or 3 days, I will have forgotten what the email was about and the thing I was supposed to have done. Teflon brain kicked in. And lecturers are hideously busy little creatures. And they can't get back to, if you're teaching a class of 200 people and they're all asking your email a question right after your lecture, there's no way you'll get through that before next week's lesson. That slowness is to be expected, which, on the upside, I think a frustrated student is a good learning student sometimes. Oh, I'm not getting an answer. I'll go and find out for myself. Dum, 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 dum. Sorted. On that, greatest thing, particularly if it's an institutional bureaucracy kind of things, Google the name of your institution and what you want done. So something like University of Birmingham dyslexia support. And that will get straight through to the right page and the right person who'll get back to you within a day. If it's talking more about a big idea, then actually bouncing questions off of ChatGTP, so you know what question you should be asking, not what the answer is, but how to ask the question, and then doing a good old internet search and never forgetting Google Scholar, whatever
Yeah,
subject
good
you're
old
doing.
Google Scholar.
Oh, but so I came across that existing, 8-9 years ago, and it changed the way that I did research, because I used to do it in libraries with books. That was just hard work. Had to go places.
Because I was no different, Brian. I'm very glad I only did my last in the last 2 or 3 finished it in the last 2 or 3 years. And I can tell you categorically that it wasn't until my master's degree that I even learnt Google Scholar existed.
Yeah, indeed. It's for those of you who don't know, just type Google and the word scholar, then it's usually the first one, and it allows Google just to search academic papers. It also, and this is the really lovely bit, is it gives you the number of citations of each of the papers, so you can actually see how worthy the papers are, because there is a bit of academic junk out. And learning that exists is part of being a student.
Other great features of Google Scholar, the cite them button. Not that I'm saying it's complete, or the cite button, I'm not saying it's completely accurate all the time, but I know for APA it works, unless your university has their own version of APA. Harvard, it's nearly correct, not quite, but there are several different referencing styles that you click a button from an article. There's an also great feature. Let's say you found a paper that supports your argument, related articles, and like Brian just said, you can then get a list of the related articles and you can look at how many times they've been cited. So it's a great resource for critical writing, research, organisation. It's also a great feature where if you've got a Google account, you can save your saved papers all in one place. So it's a great tool.
There are other tools out there that are just starting to come online. There is Elicit.ai, which is like Google Scholar, but it doesn't have all the papers, which is the big downside to it. But when you find a paper, or you find 3 papers that are useful, it finds 2 extra papers and then writes little summaries of each of the papers, so you know which papers to go and have a bit more of a look at. With the caveat, treat any AI as you would an old white guy in a pub who is likely to make stuff up that sounds interesting. Yes.
Caution.
Also, AI sometimes, if it tries to cite stuff, it cites stuff that doesn't exist. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh. So yes, do check anything that the AI gives you. I'm a great believer. No, wrong word. I'm a great adopter of AI because, again, it can be used in lots of ways to minimize executive functioning issue. It be the trusted non-person in the room. So there's the best thing that I think I found with it is you can take an email or a text from someone, drop it into AI and just say, do you think this person is being passive aggressive? And it works out whether the person is, or you can drop your own text in and say, can you make this more passive aggressive? It does.
Well, on the subject of this and AI, Goblin tools.
Goblin.tools. Oh, isn't it beautiful?
It is the student's dream. It has, if you're a student that struggles with executive function, it has a feature that is a to-do list, a magic to-do list, and a little bit like the Mando scale of mild to spicy. You can put in a task that you want to do. Let's say, I don't know, parents coming up this weekend, and let's say you set the spice to the highest. It will break down all the steps that you need to do to make sure that you're prepared. So there's some examples. I mean, this is just a random example, but it might be change the sheets, hoover my room, put my washing away, blah, 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 blah. And it gives you all of those steps broken down. But equally, if you want to do it for a more academic purpose, you could put in that you want to do reading on, I don't know, sociology of
the colour green.
consumerism. And then it will give you, it will break it down with a load of search terms of things that you can search for productivity. It's great. But what's great is that the amount of breaking down is determined by how much spice, how many chilies you put as to how much support you need. But there are other great features on it. My favourite, and I've tested it a few times, is the chef function on it. Where there's a chef function. So you put in the most we've had random ingredients. I said, let's test it. I had grapes, peas, pasta, tomatoes, chocolate, quavers. And it had come up with this salad that had chocolate shaving, crunch-up quavers. It came up with a recipe. Now that's a wild situation where perhaps you wouldn't use to have that kind of recipe.
How did it taste?
I don't know. I would really exclude like that. No, no.
The response would be, let's do it.
A more sensible approach to it would be, there are times where students towards, the next installment of their student finance where, things are a bit tight and they're sort of, this is what I normally eat, but I don't have any more money to buy that, but I had X, Y, and Z. It's a great tool to help students plan what they're eating, and it gives the recipe breakdown as well. It's a great feature, but it also has, like you've mentioned, Brian, like an estimator. I think it's a function.
The estimator, yes, works out how long things are going to take. So if you have, say, for instance, a group project, you can drop that into the estimator, and it says person A should spend this number of hours, person B should do this number of hours. Really, really good.
Yeah. I think for students, like always that struggle, I always signpost and go through the steps with them on what each means. And to different degrees, some students have absolutely loved it and it's become their way of organising themselves, and others just dip in and out. There's no right or wrong way, but I think if you're a mentor, whether you're in the autism role, whether you're in the mental health role, for all students, I think Goblin.Gibber is a great resource.
Absolutely amazing. And there are things you can do with it that you can do with other tools as well. So one of the things that I do when I'm cooking, I have I always get it wrong, GPT. There you go. I have the verbal version where you can just press a button and you start a conversation. So I'm sitting there going, oh, I've got a tin of chickpeas. I want to make some hummus. What do I do? And it says, well, first of all, you got to drain it. And then you've got to add the tahini. And have you got any garlic? It says. And I go, oh, got a little bit of garlic. And it says, is it roasted or not? And you go, well, not yet. Because doesn't matter. You can just chop it up fine cubes. Oh, okay, there you go. So the big conversation that I'm having with me and my AI buddy in the kitchen to do stuff, it just frees up my brain for other things. Really, really useful. With the AI kind of stuff, are there any other uses that you've come across recently for AI things?
No, but an interesting observation is a lot of universities now are implementing and rolling out an AI excerpt into their plagiarism policies and processes. It's interesting that that's now changing how students are, because also it's opened up a whole different world of potential. And now there's a lot of policies that are now protecting universities against submissions that are created by AI.
Or it's the other way around. So this is where we have to be very context dependent of the institutions we work with. So I believe UCL's policy is that 10% of assignments are AI free. 10% of assignments should be mandatory AI. That actually it's, you submit the conversation that you've had with ChatGPT to see how these ideas are coming together. And the rest of it, you quote your AI. So if you have been having a conversation about, I don't know, Bartian eschatology, it's something really, really obscure, Bartian eschatology, then you'll be putting in there, about knowledges of humans, knowledges about the divine, and you will then have that conversation, and then you'll cite that conversation, and it will go into your appendix that your tutors can then go through to see what you've been talking with the AI about. It's not writing your essays, it's having this non-human entity to have a conversation that helps you build your own thoughts.
Yeah.
Very, very clever. So AI will become more and more part of most courses. I can see the argument for going to say, sorry, doctors, you have it hard already. But there is something about particularly emergency-based courses that give you a qualification where you just have to be able to do it, even if there was a great big EMP that took out the world's computer systems. So being able to do some sort of task, but that's not all education. That's very
No.
part of education, this qualification side of things. So it's being able to use the AI tools that are available and also know how to use the AI tools of the future.
Yeah. I think it's very much going to become, it's going to trickle throughout education as hopefully changing the curriculum sort of comes to the horizon across the board in the future. I think AI is going to be integral to that.
Dare I say it, there is possibly, when you don't have a real flesh and blood mentor available, maybe because it's either 2 o'clock in the morning or that actually the whole funding system hasn't provided you with enough, or maybe you're seeking a diagnosis and you can't go through the official channels. Actually, maybe an AI mentor would be some use. So I think it's something that, you and I as mentors might have to put our heads together, is how we put in guide rails for these AIs that can be embodied wisdom, that know how to say, I'm not sure, which is a great mentoring strength. Yes.
Yeah.
That's still several years away. Hopefully a little bit closer is the AI implementation. And this is just to any students who are listening out there who are looking for a master's project, an AI that's basically called, fill this bloody form in for me, please. Where you go to any website, any sort of web thing, it basically sees what all is needed for the form. It knows your information. It puts everything in the right box. It's not rocket science anymore.
No, but then at what point does your data become currency in that sense?
Oh, yes, you'd have to secure your data.
Yeah.
If you are using the Microsoft subscription for your university, there is a chance that your university may have given you Copilot, or at least primary access to Copilot. If it's via an institution, it has to look after your data.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah.
So we are still very new on all this. And to anyone who's listening to this in 2 or 3 weeks' time, I hope the robot revolution went smoothly. Now, flip side of that is at university, we quite often come across Luddites. Have you encountered any absolute Luddites that you must be writing your essay with a quill kind of?
Myself excused from that. No, I haven't. I'm still very much, although I love and thrive this technology, I am very much an old school, and I still do quite like marketing things, mainly because it's a creative process for me. But no, I haven't. How about you, Brian?
It's been a while. And in fact, maybe I'm very aware of it because I was deeply scarred at a very young age. Being one of the first people with a computer doing my degree, I submitted a word processed essay, which got rejected because it wasn't handwritten.
Okay.
And there was a worry back, and then this was the 90s, early 90s, that actually if we could word process a document, people would cheat and copy from other people. And so early plagiarism reaction, oh no, there's going to be plagiarism going on, actually stopped what was a very useful accessibility tool, because I couldn't write for toffee. And it allowed me not just have one thought from the beginning to the end of an essay and then go back and have to edit it and by hand over and over again, but actually allowed me to have fragmented thoughts that I could bring together to make a coherent, or at least maybe it wasn't quite coherent, maybe just had the illusion of coherent.
I would say I'm on the fence because I get my notes. So I will print stuff off, I'll highlight it, then make my notes, and then I'll organise my notes in my notebook. But I will still produce and edit and draft the piece electronically. So it's a little bit of a hybrid approach. But I know certainly the last 2 years cohorts definitely do everything digitally. I'm yet to find a student who has a hybrid approach. without not trying to overgeneralize here, but there's
No.
definitely in the last 2 years, everything has been digital.
I reckon in the last 2 years, I've used 4 pieces of paper.
Well, you're much better for the environment, Brian.
Well, I don't know. Well, I know at home and at university, yes, it probably is, because both of them use, what do you call it? Not recycled power, renewable power.
Yeah.
Yes, but not all universities have a renewable commitment
No.
buying that kind of stuff, and energy production is not quite as green as we might like. I will say, for your workflow where you take notes on papers and books, I use something called Zotero. Now, Zotero is a citation management piece of software. The latest version, or the latest versions for the last 2 or 3 years, have basically a PDF viewer or an image viewer where you can highlight things in reds and purples and greens and then write little notes about everything you've seen, which means you can then search, so I've got a couple of thousand papers now squirreled away in various shapes and forms. So I can, because I don't remember anything, I can now search for the performing arts, and it will bring up the 2 or 3 papers that are out about the performing arts. If I search performing arts and higher education, it will bring out the 1 paper.
Yeah.
There we go. I only read it last week. But yes, it'll allow me to find my thoughts on things as well. And I can also color code it. I love color coding colors of the rainbow. I don't do it sequentially. I do it with meaning. So that if I go through these wonderful documents that I've annotated, if there are anything red, it means I don't agree with this drivel. I may then have to justify it. If I find green, that basically means I found something that backs up my own preconception. I'm very open about them. Yellow is really interesting. Orange is interesting, but I'm not sure I like the way this is going because the world is wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it gives me things.
Interestingly, I have a traffic light system, not for necessarily my note,
Yeah.
but for my writing. So let's say I've made a point. Red means I need to find the reference for this. Yellow means I've got a reference written down in my notes somewhere. I've just got to find it. Green means I've got the reference. It supports this point. I've got it in my reference list. It's there. And that's been quite good at looking at a balance of how many references are in a piece of work and how balanced things are, because every university is different, but I quite like seeing that, that the work that I was doing or I am doing is balanced in how I'm referencing things, which is sort of related to what you do, but it's more about like the writing process.
It is, and this segues nicely onto, I think, the thing we really do have to talk about is most of us will use Word or perhaps Google Documents. What is it that makes that accessible? What does it make that our outputs can be done as smoothly as possible? What functions do you use apart from changing the colors? What is it that you like about Word or hate about Word?
I like the dictation function that came in a couple of years ago, and it has got better. Don't get me wrong, there are much more sophisticated dictation assistive technologies out there, but it was okay. And for the process of a neurodivergent person who has done reading and doesn't quite, want to type it, it's a really great way of getting your idea on paper. When I was doing my master's, one of the tutors on the course said the best piece of advice I can ever give you is just put something down. Have something down on paper that you can grow from, change, work with. It makes work so much easier to develop than if you sort of get stuck in that process. And a lot of neurodivergent students do get stuck in the sort of the process between I've done the reading, I've done my note, where do I start? And I think the dictation function on Word can get you started. Things I don't like. The only thing I don't like about Word is I had to, because when I was doing my degree, the version of Word I had didn't match. There was an issue with Turnitin, and I had to email it to a Windows computer. And it was a situational thing, but the different versions of Word is the issue, basically.
That very much so. So coming back to the dictation splurge thing, which is just a lovely way to get started. It does come with a caveat. There are, I've worked with students that write once and forever. So they may take a long time just to think and get it all straight in their head. And then they'll just write it all as a one and it'll be almost perfect because they've thought their way through. There are another group of students who like to get stuff down and then edit it and move it all around and put it into order. I think both work for dictation.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it works for you, though, it's not the only way. And perhaps I'm a little bit biased because my PhD a couple of years ago, I reckon about 80% of it was me speaking rationally to my computer, just sitting and having one thought in front of another, writing it all down, then going away and spending at least double the time editing it and putting it back together again.
Because that's a massive caveat in that you don't get always the grammar features you want. You might say comma, full stop, but sometimes that gets lost in translation, which adds an extra layer of work in itself.
There is something nice about things like Grammarly, where you've got a document and it just highlights all the bit of the grammar and you just go click. Oh, yes, yes, yes. No, I wanted that. Yes, yes, yes. No. Absolutely. It's with the dictation itself that the time afterwards is, maybe it's just when I speak, I'm not as sequential as I think I should be. So it's having a plan that then tells me I need a paragraph about XYZ. I can then speak XYZ. I then edit XYZ. And then I'm on to the next bit. And it's a nice little flow that keeps me ticking over. Other methods may apply.
Yeah.
If you're using dictation, Microsoft Word has a built-in one, which is reasonable enough. Siri is so much better. And if you've got a Mac, you can just press 2 buttons and tap anywhere on Siri once you've got it switched on. And it'll use Siri's dictation function, which is remarkably good. Google Docs now has a voice type button, which is magical. It picks up some very, very bizarre words while I'm rambling away at high speed. So it works in different places. There are also new AIs coming out like Otter AI and Parrot AI, which have another level of fidelity when it comes to transcription, particularly if you're a researcher and you're doing that kind of stuff and you need to capture interviews.
Yeah.
Biggest thing for interviews is, if you can, have it as a Zoom conversation, just press record, then you get a transcript at the end. Saves hours of work.
Yeah, definitely. There are definitely tweaks and technological things that you can enhance your work as a mentor, but actually the livelihoods and the well-being of your students by some of these life hacks is quite commonly referred to.
It's a really good place to stop at it. So we're going to pause here. I think, and do disagree with me, but I think we're going to need part 2. So
I feel the same.
Part 2, because there's a bit of our list that we haven't even touched on yet. So we'll come back and we will start next session with a sort of consolidation of life hacks before we go into things like how do we separate work from jobs, from homes and students and things like that. We'll talk maybe a bit about focus modes. We'll talk about notification culls. We'll talk about sharing documents and doing things in groups, which can be a blissful experience, or it can be the bane of our lives. So at this point, I will say thank you, Lucy.
Thank you, Brian.
Now, if you have questions, we do love to hear them here at neuromentoringpodcast@gmail.com.
This has been Neuromentoring. Be
Brilliant. Hello.